The Owl House got fucked over by Gravity Falls. Okay, I'll elaborate. Look, no disrespect for Gravity Falls intended, alright? I love the series for its fantastical setting and achingly real characters. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that the show reignited cartoons not just for Disney, but for all of Western animation by contributing to the renaissance of the deceptively cute but actually dark as hell series that more or less started with Adventure Time. Gravity Falls was a cultural influence to an absurd degree, but ironically, that led to well, not a problem exactly, more like unforeseen consequences. What do I mean exactly? Well, I think it'll become clearer if I actually, talk about the Owl House first. So, from the 10 episodes I've seen thus far, I'd put it squarely in the very good but not quite great category. Don't get me wrong, this show has a lot going for it already, with the animation itself being really high caliber. I mean, just look at this opening, guys, it's freaking gorgeous! James Baxter, is that you, my man? Anyway, in the visuals department, this is easily one of Disney's finest works. But if we flip the coin and talk about the writing, that's where things start getting a little iffy. To summarize, a teenage girl named Luce gets hit by Truck-kun, enters a portal into your standard PG fantasy world of eldritch abominations, where she meets up with Ida, a fine-as-wine owl lady who's an otaku for, you guessed it, owls, along with her pet Cubone, ambiguous dog thing with a Napoleon complex. Anyway, Luce decides to completely forgo the safe, comfortable sanctuary of the human world to learn the black arts and regularly place herself in mortal danger in hopes of gaining some semblance of self-worth. As we all should. In short, this show is right up my alley. And to be honest, I think what's keeping this show from reaching its full potential, at least as far as 10 episodes will get you, is not that it does anything particularly bad, but that it hasn't really done anything especially great either. Every aspect of this series has something edging on unique, but is fundamentally very safe. Take Luce for example. Girl, I love you, you're sweet as can be, and you've got a hell of a lot of charm, but it pains me to say that you're kinda basic. Luce is pretty much every adorkable girl you knew in high school personified into one undefined caricature. It ends up being difficult to really pin down what exactly makes Luce Luce, because by maxing out her relatability stat, they forgot to make her fascinating as a result. At the moment, Luce feels more like a personality than a full-fledged character, if that makes sense. I'm not gonna go so far as to say she's a Mary Sue, but it's almost too easy to root for her, you know? I still will, of course, cause honestly, how could you not? Up next is Ida the Owl Lady, who is definitely the show's most engaging character, and for a number of reasons. Most notably, she's the perfect example of somebody who's fucked up their life but is undeniably a good person at heart. She's a high school dropout, is estranged from her family, is plagued by a stand-in for a medical condition, and got jaded by a system when she realized they were full of shit. She's utterly believable in that millennial sort of way. But where she differs from Luce is that while she's relatable, her story is uniquely her own, and by virtue of that, is far more compelling. It also helps that she's characterized by Wendy Malick, whose buttery voice could grow my crops and clear my pores. Anyway, lastly, we've got King. King is kind of an enigma, both in universe and for us. He obviously fills the comic relief role, but right now, that seems to be his defining role. His main shtick is that he may or may not be a demonic monstrosity lording over the spawns of hell, but he's just too cute to be taken seriously. And my main gripe with King is that I don't really know what his deal is. One second, he'll be an asshole, but the next moment, he'll do something genuinely kind that contradicts his supposed mythos. I know it's still early, so his motivations haven't been established yet, but this conflict of interest feels like it's being used more for plot convenience than character building. I'm sure his narrative impact will be apparent eventually, but for now, he's just kind of there. And that's our main squad in a nutshell. The rest of the supporting characters seem to range from being pretty interesting to pretty unremarkable. For one, Luce has 2 friends in school, because a teenage main character always has to be part of a power trio, am I right? They're nice and all, but their personalities are pretty interchangeable, and they don't really provide that much of a foil to each other. Our antagonists for this series generally leave more of an impact, with Amity herself being an especially compelling take on the bully character. Now as for the story, this is one of those series that I feel falls into the trap I like to call half-ass meta. What I mean is that the Owl House will often poke fun at the cliches, tropes, and plot developments these kind of fantasy shows often experience, but not actually do anything that different. The body swap episode being one such example. I mean, that's not always the case, of course. The show has its fair dose of genuine twists and sincere moments, like with Mommy Bat for one. It just needs a bit more consistency here and there. I know I may sound like I'm bitching at this point, but for realsies, I've got nothing against the Owl House. It's mostly average right now, but sometimes it'll really knock it out of the park. I can honestly say it's one of those cartoons that's improving with time, and I can easily see this being one of the greats of TV animation by the end of the show's run. Unfortunately, the Owl House is fighting an uphill battle right now. Why, you ask? Well, it goes back to what I said about Gravity Falls unintentionally fucking it over. As I've said before, the Owl House is the latest in a growing line of perfectly entertaining preteen fantasy shows, and that's no coincidence. Making cartoons is essentially one big game of follow the leader. In this case, when Gravity Falls broke records, Disney started throwing their cash monies at every relatively similar series they could get their grubby little hands on. Star vs. the Forces of Evil, DuckTales, I think, Amphibia, and now the Owl House. All of them are rock solid, don't get me wrong. But when you're riding off the coattails of a trendsetter like Gravity Falls, you guys know just as well as I do that people are gonna start making comparisons, spouting bullshit claims about how so-and-so plot development is just like Gravity Falls, and how the Owl House is ripping it off. And you know what? That's not fucking fair. Yeah, the Owl House has its fair share of legit criticisms, but they're not deal breakers by any means. But because Gravity Falls was just too damn good, those flaws end up looking more amplified by comparison. And this is just my take, but I think the reason I haven't seen much people talking about the Owl House despite setting itself up as a prime target for fan theories, shipping wars, and nasty-ass fan art is because we subconsciously see it as just another cog in Disney's animated lineup of fantasy cartoons. And frankly, that concerns me. Toxic fan discourse is one thing, but no discourse at all can break a show. Granted, the show is still in its early stages, and the Gravity Falls fandom didn't really take off until season 2, but I can tell that the Owl House is a passion project that really deserves a fighting chance. It's still figuring itself out, but it hasn't done any harm, so if you're still on the fence about watching it, all I can say is, give it a shot. If nothing else, there will always be one good reason to watch the Owl House. Hey, so did anyone else get Little Witch Academia vibes from the Owl House, or is it just me? Meh, whatever. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I'm hoping to make this whole YouTube thing a full-time job one day, so if you like what you saw and you want to see more content like this, you can show your support by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to my channel. Until then, stay tuned!